Well, we're back at part 2 on the 1972 Honda CT70. If you guys missed the last video on this machine, we picked this thing up from an online auction sight unseen for $2,300, which was a lot of money. But this thing's in all original, good condition, and these in my area bring about $3,500. So I figured if we could get it running, we could make it worth our while. So we got this thing back home, started diagnosing it, and went through pretty much the whole machine. So we ended up going through the carburetor, cleaning up all the jets. We put a new spark plug in, a new battery, all new fuel lines and filters. We went through the valves, adjusted those. We made sure timing was spot on and everything seemed good. We even adjusted the cam chain and made that tighter. After all that, we finally got this thing to fire up for the first time in a very long time. And it sounded pretty decent. But we went to go take it for the first ride and it was very boggy, very unresponsive, and seemed to lack a lot of power. So that's when we started diagnosing other issues. So this one originally had the aftermarket carb on there. We cleaned that out before, but we decided to swap it with the original, and that actually made it run way, way worse. So we put the aftermarket back on, and then we checked timing again to make sure that was spot on, and timing was spot on. So we came down to the point system over here, and we saw that somebody had added new points at one point, but they forgot to add a condenser. So the condenser looked really, really rough. I'll quick show you guys what that looked like. And usually when you change out points, you want to change out the condenser, and they had not done that. So those wires were barely making contact with the top of the condenser here, and the condenser looked like it was leaking out the side. You can see. So it was in pretty rough shape. So we were kind of guessing that the condenser was bad. We also found that there was a pretty bad mouse nest inside the frame here. So we weren't getting headlights, neutral light, any lights up here. And we found that when you take off this rubber piece here and shine a flashlight in here, there's a big mouse nest right in here and a couple chewed up wires. So I'm thinking there's a short going on right in here, and it's shorting out the system. So before we do anything today, we're gonna try to fix that problem, which is a bummer because the gas tank has to come out, the fuel lines have to come out, and the battery has to come out to get that wiring system out of there. And then we have to solder everything up, put it back together, and hope that it fixes the problem. But we have to fix that before we can go on to the points and change the condenser. I don't want anything shorting out before we fix it. So let's start with that. And the goal for today is to fix up all these problems and have this run reliably with no bogging. Seat coming off, battery coming out. Got the whole battery box out of here. Let's see, red and green. Disconnect those. This one was connected to black here. We can get the gas tank to come out. Get that covered back up. Plate comes off. We're gonna have to go down below and drain out that gas before we can get the gas tank off. Trying to get this thing to drain. Put this gas line in here. All right, take this off. draining into there. We can get the gas tank out now. Down here you can see the coil. All the wiring there looks intact. And down there, you can see the mouse nest right in there. See that? Kind of hard to see it. There's definitely a nest down there. So, what we're gonna have to do is disconnect the wires from here. I think there's a plug-in down there somewhere. I'm gonna reach back there. Maybe with the vacuum first, vacuum up all that mouse nest and then disconnect the wire harness from there so we can pull it back. So first things first, let's crack that open. That was easy. The ignition switch, take it off. There's the ignition switch. You can see a couple of wires were chewed right there. See, the brown one was chewed, the red one was chewed. Make sure these are all good to go. Doesn't look horrible. Got all these disconnected, pull it through. Nothing's too badly chewed up. I'll show you guys quick. The worst one is probably right here. So the wires right there are chewed up pretty good. The red and white, and then the red. You can see, I wonder if that was hitting the frame and shorting things out. Because that's positive going in. So that definitely could be causing issues. So we can repair that. I think that's pretty much it. I don't see any chewed through wires here. We can test it with the ohm reader as well, the continuity tester. Make sure all the wires are going all the way through. All right, so we're looking at this wire here. This is the red and brown wire, and it's really weird. We're getting power out of the switch, but we weren't getting power up to the headlight. So it took off all the wrap and everything, and the wire was complete, wasn't chewed through. And I did a continuity test from the red and brown up to the headlight up here. You can see it goes up to here. Did a continuity test. We weren't getting any continuity between this wire. So I actually started just chopping off pieces of the wire, and now we're getting continuity between this line here. So if you do a continuity test, you should hear a beep between the two lines. So now, if you do this, see that? So check this out. I cut this piece out right here. I have that wire. Look at this. No beep. So we're not getting any continuity through that wire. And I was starting to feel around, and that felt pretty limp right there. See that? So right here, it looks like the wire got pulled out. There's no wire between this spot. Okay, it's just all, there's no wire. So at one point, that wire got pulled out of there. So we found our problem. So I cut that back. We're gonna put new wire all the way up through that wiring harness. But I wonder how many other wires are like that where they're not getting power. So let's fix this one first and then move on. But that's why we weren't getting any power up to the headlight. All right, let's check continuity again now that we connected the wires. All right. Here we go. There we go. All right, now we're hearing a beep. So we're getting power all the way up. Well, it looks like the neutral light wire was pulled out as well. Check this out. One end of the wire to here, one end to the other post of the neutral wire. No continuity at all. So there's a break in here somewhere. Feels like right there. Yeah, no wire. Look at that, no wire exposed at all. So that's the first piece of exposed wire there. Huh. And nothing on this side either. That's crazy. There we go, it's starting to get better. Now let's see if we get any continuity. So from this end to the other end, now we're hearing a beep. So we're gonna fix the neutral wire coming from here up to here, and then we should get a neutral light. Turns out every single wire going up to the headlight was broken inside the actual wire plastic. So we had to cut each one and solder each one together with new wire. We weren't getting any power up to the headlight. So now when we turn the key, you can see that the neutral light comes on, like it should, and then check this out, the horn works. That wasn't working before. The headlights do not work yet. Those only work when the machine is running, but the tail light's working. But the headlight is wired into the coil down here. There's a yellow wire that controls the headlight, and that goes up to here, and then goes to the headlight. So once the machine is running, the headlight should work. I tested the high and low beam, and that is working, that switch is working. So everything should be working once we put it all back together and fire this thing up. But yeah, that is awesome that the neutral light works and that the horn works. So it turned out to be broken wires in this harness. It was not the mouse. All right, we can shove everything back in here. Take this one off, so the green comes off, switch comes off like that, this goes in here. Getting the gas tank back in, we fed some gas line through the frame on that side. And feed another one up. Pull this. All right, everything's still working. All right, wires are all back in, looking good. Battery's all hooked up. So now we're gonna go down here and go to the stator. Let's get that stator plate off so we can get that new condenser installed. All right, just to make things easier, let's get the stator plate off and install the condenser that way, just so we can solder everything up nice and we can get on the bench. Should pull right out of here. Oh, there's gonna be oil. Shoot. So there's oil behind there. Not a ton, but enough. And then this clamp piece needs to come off. Get out of the way. There we go. And there's the neutral wire here. Go. So stator plate's off. You can see the cam chain underneath there. It gets tensioned by this piece right here. So what happens is when we were adjusting that last video, we're pushing up on that piston, which in turn pushes up on this pivoting rod here, and then it tightens it with this tensioner. This tensioner pushes down on that chain and tensions that. So now it's nice and tight. So that's looking good. So if your chain was loose, all you would have to do is crack the bolt here, which is holding that rod in place, and then the one underneath here, and then twist this piston rod up to push that up and tension that higher. So that's basically it. Everything else looks good in there. So I put the old points back on. Let's install it with the new points again. Now that we know that was the problem. Get this little guy off of here. That pulls out like that. Get the points off. This piece is going to go on just like that. Let's see, how do we want that? We don't want it grounding out to anything, so it's gonna have to be like that. So we'll tighten that down. This is going to go on there like that. Lock that into place. And then these wires we're going to clean up a little bit. I don't really like the ends of those too much. So take some cleaner. Clean off these ends. I'm going to take a brush to them. Clean those off a little bit. That one's pretty good. Let's clean those off one more time here. We want those to solder up nice onto the new condenser. So here it is. Here's the old one, here's the new one. So this is going to sit in here. Let's see, how did it sit in here before? I think like this. That wire came like that. Pretty sure it's sitting in there like that. Let's see. This one kind of has a different post on it. That one sat a lot nicer in there. See how this one sits a lot flatter? Alright, so here's the old one. Here's the new one. The new one had a different bracket on it. So I found another one right here that should work. Has the same bracket as this one and looks a lot better. So we're hoping that that one's gonna work. It's completely different. So let's try this one out first. We're gonna solder the end of it here. We're just gonna quick spray that off with a little cleaner. Get that wiped down. It's nice and clean. Alright, I think we got her pretty tight here. That one's tight. That wire's tight. Now we can fold these over. Nice and tight on there. Make sure our connection's good here, nothing's rubbing. Alright, that looks pretty darn good right there. Wires are out of the way, now the flywheel goes on. We've got the woodruff key already in there. Just line that up. Drop it right into place here. Just like that. Alright, now we can get the nut on. Alright, now we're going to set the points gap. We'll get the spec for that. Alright, so points gap is supposed to be between 12 and 16 thousandths of an inch. Let's see if we're close here. We've got to be really close. That's where it's open right there. We're basically right at 12. Let's see if we have any spark here. All right, let's see if we're still getting spark. Turn this on. Good spark. Alright, so what we're going to do now is fire this thing up and use our timing light to get the ignition timing spot on. All right, let's see if she fires up. right, she fired right up. That's a good sign. All right, here is the timing light. We've got the little trigger thing that goes on the coil. And you've got your negative and positive that hooks up to a 12-volt battery. So let's get the trigger piece onto the coil line. Let's see, right to here. Ouch, hot. Let's take this off and see if I can wrap it around in here. I don't want it to melt here. Now one on the positive, one negative. So what we want to do is line up the F with that little groove as this comes around. We want that to trigger right when that F hits that little notched out part. That's when you want the spark to fire right there. If we're off, we have to adjust the points gap. So let's go ahead, start this thing up, and we'll see where we're at the timing here. We're not even close. No wonder this thing's not running, right? Jeez. So the F was like way over here. It needs to be back over here. So it is firing really, really late. So we are going to adjust the points gap, see if we can get that to fire at the right time. All right, get a screwdriver in there. All right, we just adjusted the points again. Let's fire this thing back up and see where the F is at. It should be right there. See what happens. We might be pretty close. We'll see. Turn it on, that would help. That's right where we want to be here. Spot on right there. So you can see the F lines up with right there, that notch. And if anything, it's just a tad before, maybe like just a hair before that. But high idle, it's right in the middle. And then as you rev it, the F comes and creeps up a little bit here. We might try to move it just a hair, see if we can get that perfect, but man, that's really, really close. All right, we finally got this thing perfect now. I think that's as good as we're gonna get it. I'm calling that good. I'd say that's perfect. All right, that's awesome. We're right in the middle. Well, we got this thing timed up perfectly. Let's get our cover back on here. This is going on just like this. Yeah, that timing light works really well. It's way easier than the light bulb method. So I really prefer that timing light. You can get it spot on with that. Okay, now our shifter lever going on. I think right there is pretty good. Get that in. All right, last video we dug into this carb and I actually changed the float height to allow more gas in because I thought it was running lean. And you can see it's kind of leaking out of here a little bit, out the overflow. And that should not be happening. So what we're gonna do is take the carb off, reset that float height, and then we should be good to go for the first test drive. With the petcock in the off position, so no gas drips out of here. But we should be able to adjust the float height when this is on the machine. I'm really hoping having that ignition timing spot on is gonna really give us a lot of power here. Let this drain out here. All right, let that drain. Okay, slide here too. pretty easy carb to work on. Okay. So you can see the float height we changed just a little bit. We're going to put that back to where it was by folding down that tab. Alright, so we just bent down the tab there a little bit. So now float height is where it's supposed to be. It shouldn't leak any more gas now. So now let's put it back together and we can attempt to take it for the first ride. Alright, carburetor's all back on, float height adjusted. We've got the little air filter, the pod filter on there. Everything is within spec. So we went over this whole machine. We've got the ignition timing now spot on. We got the new condenser on there, or the newer one I should say. New spark plug. The valves are just adjusted, those are perfect. Timing spot on, fresh fuel, fresh carb clean. And now all the wires are intact and working. So the horn works, the neutral light works, and hopefully the headlight works. We can quick test that before we take it for the first ride. But we should be good to go. So the headlight will work with the second key position when you start this thing up, hopefully. If we wired everything correctly. Let's see. Neutral, kick her over. Look at that. Check that out. High beam lights working. Horns working. Tail light, let's see. Look at that. All the lights are working now. Let's see if high and low work. So that's high and low. There we go. There we go. Cool. Every single thing is working. That's pretty good. Running pretty good now. No smoking. Turn our headlight on. Alright, let's go ahead and see if this moves. Hopefully it doesn't bog. Doesn't bog at all. That was second gear coming up the hill. Not a single bog issue, so it is completely fixed. That is a pretty good feeling. watch it climb this hill. So first gear, second gear, doesn't bog at all. That is a great sign. We're in second gear still. It doesn't bog at all. Third gear. Wow, this bike could not be running better. Everything is fixed on it. Everything works perfectly. The only thing I think it might need, because it's got a pod filter, is one size up on the jetting for the main jet. And that's about it. But otherwise, I mean, it is perfect. It doesn't bog at all. Has really, really good power. Goes about probably close to 40, I'm guessing, on a straight stretch. So it's pretty darn fast for a little CT70. And starts up first kick every time now. So man, it's working out great. So I'm really happy we got the timing light and we were able to time this thing up perfectly. I think that really helped. And then obviously the condenser. But yeah, we'll fire this thing right back up. But yeah, this thing is running awesome. Watch it start first kick again. Now first kick every time. Before it would take like 5 kicks to start. Now it's first kick every time. So that timing is spot on now. Headlights working perfect. Horn. Yeah, I'd say she's pretty good to go. No gas leaking at all. So fixing the float height helped that problem. Gauge still works. So really all we need for this thing now is a new seat cover. And this one will be done. It turned out really, really nice. Look how clean that thing is. Well, this one is all fixed up, good to go. So between the condenser and getting this ignition timing spot on, I think it fixed our bogging problem. I know the CT70s are really finicky if the ignition timing is not spot on. So luckily we got the timing light and we were able to hook that up, use that today, and that really helped us out a ton. We were able to get the ignition timing spot on, and I think that was the main culprit as to why this thing was boggy. And then obviously the wires not touching the condenser wasn't helping either. So we are going to get one jet size up on the carb, a new seat cover for it, and this one's going to be complete. I'm really happy we got this thing, and I'm really happy we ended up putting some extra time into it and getting this thing running right. Definitely worth it now. This thing's got a ton of power, super fun to rip, and like I said, now it starts first kick every time. So this one is completely done. Hopefully you guys enjoyed picking this one up for $2,300 from the online auction, diagnosing it, getting it to run, and then now this video, getting it to run right with no bogginess. If you guys are having bogging problems on your CT70, I would definitely check the condenser and the ignition timing. Fixing those things definitely helped for me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video. And until next time, we are out.